A lonely road, a dark moonlit night, and up from behind you hear the thundering of hooves. You turn just in time to see a terrible sight. A rider with no head, and in its place, a flaming jack-o'-lantern. Surely you must have heard this one by now. That's right, ringing in Halloween season, we're diving into the legend of Sleepy Hollow. Hello friends, I'm Katie O'Loughlin, aka Madame Macabre, and welcome back to the Folklore Files, where we dig deep into creepy legends, haunted places, and all the things that go bump in the night. Today we're headed straight for the foggy banks of New York's Hudson River, where right about now, autumn has set in strong, and their most famous story rises from the dead once again. It's been adapted into books, movies, and more over the years, endlessly capturing the fear and imagination of the nation. So settle on in now for a frightening tale, because we're going to be taking a closer look at the Headless Horseman. Before Sleepy Hollow became one of America's most famous ghost stories, it was in fact a very real place with just as real of a history. Specifically, Tarrytown, a part of modern-day New York that was settled by the Dutch in the 1600s. And, as people tend to do when they migrate, they brought their love of storytelling along with them. And among these were their favorite ghost stories, tales of phantom riders and restless spirits, the whole works. Now, as many of you know, Washington Irving was the author responsible for the creation of hit novella The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and by the time he arrived in the 1800s, those original Dutch stories had long since blended with more regional legends, including a heavy influence from the recent traumas brought about by the American Revolutionary War. Such as is the nature of the horrors of war, people began speaking of the tragedies. Soldiers who had died gruesomely in battle were said to haunt the woods and valleys along the Hudson. Among these tales included one of particular note, a Hessian soldier who had tragically lost his head to a cannonball strike. I think you can see where this is headed. Okay, enough terrible puns and foreshadowing. Let's get back to Irving. As mentioned, there was already a rich tapestry of local legends by the time Irving arrived. He was fascinated and inspired by the stories, picking up the pen and creating his own short story in 1820, the aforementioned Legend of Sleepy Hollow. His tale introduced the timid schoolteacher Ichabod Crane, the lovely Katrina Van Tassel, and the brash Brom Bones. And of course, he set the story in the dreary little Dutch village of Sleepy Hollow. And of course, while Irving's story was a work of fiction, it was grounded in regional superstitions that locals very much believed to be fact. Residents of the real town of Sleepy Hollow swore that there was something off about the place, that it was bewitched, a place where the veil was paper thin and ghosts rode at night. Whether the town was ghostly, thus inspiring Irving, or whether Irving inspired the town to become ghostly, is sort of a chicken versus the egg sort of situation. We'll probably never know the full truth, but either way, anyone who visits the town today will tell you the energy is rather unique. According to Irving's tale, Ichabod Crane was a man of excessive hunger and superstitious nature, and he found himself in competition with Brom Bones for the hand of the town's most coveted woman, Katrina Van Tassel. Interestingly enough, Irving based her off of real-world Tarrytown resident Eleanor Brush Nee Van Tassel. Many other characters were also inspired by real-world equivalents. Anyway, there's a night of dancing, laughter, and of course, ghost stories, after which Ichabod rides back home through the dark and winding woods. His ride took him past an old bridge and finally near a churchyard. And it is there where the Headless Horseman makes his debut. This haunting scene led to what became one of the most famous chases in American literature. The horseman was mounted on a terrifying black steed with fiery eyes and charged after poor Ichabod. To Ichabod's horror, the rider had no head on his shoulders. Instead, he carried it tucked under his arm. Ichabod fled for his life, racing across the bridge and away from the horseman. As he rode, the horseman hurled his head straight at Ichabod. The following morning, there was no sign of Ichabod. Only his hat was found lying beside a shattered pumpkin. Now, whether poor Ichabod was spirited away by the phantom or merely scurried away into the night out of shame, Irving left it up to our interpretation. Perhaps the phantom was only a superstitious man's hallucination, or maybe he was real and a very real threat. You get to decide. That's part of the genius of the story. There's no clear answers to the truth. Irving's tale of the Headless Phantom is no doubt a legendary piece of literature, but the roots from which it was inspired go so much deeper. Fascinatingly, decapitated horsemen are a heavily recurring motif in European folklore, most notably in Irish and German legends. Look no further than the Irish Dullahan, for example. These creatures were said to be headless riders that carried their own skull and used a human spine as a whip. Talk about terrifying. The Dullahan were said to appear as a harbinger of death, and even said to be an embodiment of the Celtic god Crumdove. There were also several German tales of headless knights doomed to ride until they found their missing heads. And of course, there was the aforementioned headless Hessian soldier of Sleepy Hollow. There are a few possible real-world leads as to who this soldier could have been, but a persistent favorite candidate comes from the account of Major William Heath in White Plains. He recorded a report after a quick skirmish on November 1st, 1776, where he claimed that a cannon shot took off the head of a Hessian trooper and killed a horse. A headless soldier, his fallen equine companion, buried quietly in an unmarked grave in a Dutch churchyard. I think the pieces may be falling into place, no? I think it's pretty easy to see where Irving may have gotten his inspiration from. Even today, the real village of Sleepy Hollow leans into its ghostly reputation with open arms. Every October, the streets fill with jack-o'-lanterns, horseman reenactors trot about, and the old Dutch church and graveyard give candlelight tours. Yes, that church, the very one mentioned in Irving's tale. Interestingly, residents and visitors alike say it's not just a ghost story. Sleepy Hollow is a truly haunted place. Whether it be ghostly sightings of Revolutionary War soldiers, echoing hooves thundering in the distance, or even, sometimes, the sight of a ghostly rider vanishing into the mist. Some residents even claim the town to be a thin place, somewhere where the veil is thin and spirits can stir more easily. It's actually spoken about as a point of pride. To many locals, they will proudly proclaim, "Yeah, it's haunted here, and we like it that way," which is honestly something I can respect. Speaking of hauntings, let's take a look at a few reported first-hand encounters. That's right, there are those who claim that the Headless Horseman is more than just a work of fiction. Over the years, and all across the world, people have shared harrowing stories of their own haunting encounters. According to Redditor, Our Performance, they had a chilling run-in when they were just a small child. They stated that they had been visiting a house with their mother, and upon walking to the pedestrian path outside to take the trash bins out, they spotted something chilling. They claimed to have been looking down the path when they saw what looked like the dark silhouette of a horse and rider, totally black like a shadow. The figure appeared to be roughly 300 to 400 meters away and had begun to canter toward them. They claimed that their mother didn't seem to sense the figure at all, not even looking away from the bins. The child, being young and interested in horses at the time, begged the mother to look up because they wanted to go see the horsey. but their mother did not react. Before the ghostly figure could reach them, the mother brought them back inside the house. They claimed to have glued themselves to the window in hopes of seeing the figure again, but it never reappeared. In the comments, another reader exclaimed that an elderly neighbor had recounted nearly an identical tale to them years ago. The Redditor claims to be a rational person now and over the years has tried to explain it, but they just can't. They say that at the age, they had never even consumed any media involving a Headless Horseman yet to have influenced them. Very curious indeed. Another tale comes from a now deleted Redditor who shared their own haunting experience. According to his story, years ago, he and a friend had been driving home through the deep woods. They had been headed down a particularly rural patch of old highway at the time. They had originally intended to go hunting, but things went odd. He said that the morning hunt had felt strange, almost as though they were the ones being watched. The narrator claimed that they were a police officer and an ex-Marine, so they weren't one to spook easily, but this spooked them. The bad feelings persisted until they gave up on the hunt and decided to pack up for the day. The whole time, the feeling didn't go away. It just got worse. On the way home, he claims to have encountered something he has struggled to come to terms with to this day. Around mile marker 18, something grim appeared. At the curve of the road, just past the old bridge, stood a tall, black horse with a rider dressed in all black. The dark rider was massive, and most frightening of all, it was missing its head. Both rider and horse were abnormally large and darker than night, leering over them. As they drove past the rider, time almost seemed to slow down. The rider never moved, as if gazing out, waiting for something. And upon passing by, they looked for the rider in their rearview mirror to see he had simply vanished. The narrator and their friend both saw the same thing, but after the incident, their friend never wanted to speak of it again. The narrator never saw the figure again, but the memory still haunts him. Both sound like chilling encounters, no doubt. Whether true tales or creative storytelling, these first-hand accounts continue to push the legend. Now, beyond the literal, there is also a lot of meaning to be gleaned from the metaphorical as well. Next up, let's delve a little bit deeper into the symbolic. Beyond the chills and thrills of a headless phantom, the horseman of lore represents something even deeper, the embodiment of fear itself. For the people of early America, the horseman was a staunch reminder of the still fresh echoes of the violence of war. And beyond this, it highlighted the power of superstitions and how the consequences of our past can always chase us down. For Irving's readers, the horseman represented the ugly clash of reason meeting imagination. Poor Ichabod Crane fancied himself a very rational man, but he was also haunted by deep superstitious beliefs. The headless phantom was his own personal reckoning, a demon he couldn't outrun. And for our modern audience, the headless rider has become something else entirely. A beloved icon of Halloween, a perfect ghostly embodiment of everything we love about spooky season. What more could you ask for? Dark woods, a haunted cemetery, and a relentless phantom that makes you question what's real and what's not. No matter what the Headless Horseman means to you, there are no doubts that this is one legend that will continue to endure for ages to come. So, my friends, do I think there's really such a thing as the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow? Well, the short answer is no, not really. That particular phantom is one I personally believe to be firmly rooted in the realm of fiction. That being said, the more general phenomenon of phantom riders around the world remains a little more up for debate. But as for Sleepy Hollow, whether the phantom is real or not doesn't really seem to matter. The legend itself is more than alive and well in that sleepy town. The fascinating thing about the legend of the Headless Horseman is the lesson it offers. Because at the end of the day, it isn't just about a ghostly rider. It's also a cautionary tale about being careful not to fall victim to your own fears. If you let your anxieties get out of hand, in the end, they'll consume you. Whether there really is a ghostwriter out there or not isn't really important. The story has long since taken on a life of its own and is shared year after year, filling the town of Sleepy Hollow with whimsy, imagination, and of course, a good old dose of fear. It's become a major part of the local culture, and I think that's pretty cool. So, on that note, if you're out walking the banks of the Hudson one dark and chilly night, maybe keep an ear out for the sound of thundering hooves, because in the town of Sleepy Hollow, the Headless Horseman always rides again. So, what do you think? Is the rider really out there waiting to chase his next victim down? Or is this demon a little more metaphorical in nature? Whatever the case, I truly hope you've enjoyed this expedition into one of America's most enduring Halloween legends. Don't forget to leave a like and maybe even subscribe if you're interested in joining me for more chilling tales from the Folklore Files. But I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. I have been Katie O'Loughlin, and I will see you next time. Remember, my friends, stay curious, and as always, stay creepy.